It's still live on Newsfile. It's on Joy 99.7 FM. It's also on the JoyNews channel on Multi-TV. If you're watching us on Facebook, just go to our Facebook page. If you are not, you can watch the live stream there. We're also on YouTube, by the way. For those of you who are out and about, just get your phone and you get onto Facebook. Look for the JoyNews channel. You'll find us there live streaming. And before we move on to the next big conversation, there's the communications directorate of the National Identification Authority had just sent me a quick statement for the attention of Ace Ankuma. A quick response to Ace Ankuma about NIA. He said the law allows NIA to register staff of institutions that apply for the service. We have registered staff of some institutions, but that service is currently on hold because of the mass registration we have started. It is a requirement of the law that we do mass registration first, followed by continuous registration, which will take place at NIA regional and district offices. For institutional registration, an institution must put in an application addressed to the Executive Secretary, the National Identification Authority, Head Office, Accra. When approval is granted, then the service is extended to the entity. And many thanks. Pam Betty is the communication director. So that's Ace for you.
Nice.
Okay, so we have a 30-minute extension on Newsfile because, as you can imagine, the terrorism, the kidnappings, and the politics of it has become one of the most topical issues, in fact, the topical issue this week. And so we're going to devote some time to this particular conversation in the next 1 hour or so, and we'll end at 12:30 on the dot. And we've shuffled the pack again. Joining me now is Colonel Festus Abaji, retired author, conflict analysis, and member council on foreign relations, Ghana. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Also with me, joining the panel now is Sami Jemfi, who is a communications officer of the National Democratic Congress. Still with me is Abdul Malik Wekubako, who is the editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, and Ace Ankuma, who is a private legal practitioner. I want to quickly start on the Canadian girls. And this week, press conferences were held. I want you to take a listen to the government, Kojo Nkrumah, detailing how this whole daring rescue mission unfolded.
The operation involved the CID of the Ghana Police Service, the Bureau of National Investigations, the Special Weapons and Tactics Unit of the National Security Council, and Defense Intelligence. No foreign assets were involved in the operation. I repeat, no foreign assets were involved in the operation. Satellite data from the Canadians is not correct. As I've mentioned, no foreign assets were involved in this operation. It is our understanding that this Canadian team was in town to explore ways by which they could help in rescuing these young ladies, but that was not necessary, as our security apparatus was on the ground and had clarity on what to do. So yes, it's true, there was a Canadian team in town. They were in town, we are told, to explore ways by which they could find other ways of helping with this matter. But as we are informed, our people on the ground had clarity on what to do, and the result is what you see currently. I've mentioned there are ongoing operations on similar matters, and the security apparatus encourages that we should be circumspect in our reportage and our public conversation because it has the potential of compromising some of the ongoing operations. I'll tie that to the first question about, is there more emphasis on Canadians or foreigners than on Ghanaians? No. The equal level of attention is being given to all of these crimes, regardless of which national is involved. But as has been mentioned, the security agencies require a lot of information and space so that they can do their intelligence gathering and deal with these matters. And we are hopeful that we can all support them by ensuring that they get that information and that space, and then they can get to the bottom of these matters. Just last week, some arrests were made in connection with that. That tells you that there's an active operation ongoing there. If anybody has further information, you can please do well to make it available to the security agencies. And the same level of seriousness that they attach to all of the others that have happened recently, which they have dealt with, they are applying that same level of seriousness. Ghana's security agencies continue to assure the general public, including Ghanaians and potential travelers, that Ghana is safe and they have what it takes to deal with any criminal enterprises that may spring up in the country. This is a couple of days ago, I think in a statement that we issued from this ministry on behalf of the National Security Ministry, they have just finished an appraisal, and they have come to the conclusion that there are no imminent threats, no actionable intelligence, and that the risk and crime profiles of our country have not changed, and their men and their necessary logistics and equipment are available to them and on the ground to ensure that our safety is upheld. And I think that that position between the time we put out that statement and now has not changed.
Speaker, in today's world, where sadly crime and terror have become part of everyday life, I can say that Ghana is certainly the safest country in the West African region and remains one of the few places on earth where we're not embarrassed to see ourselves as each other's keepers.
So you just had the information minister, and just at the tail end, you had the president speak on this. I want to start with Colonel on this one. And Colonel, if you listen to Kojo, even in the press conference, he had to juggle between telling us what happened with the rescue of the kidnapped girls, but also at the same time addressing the tardy missing girls. In all those weeks when the story broke about first the kidnapping of the girls, Canadian girls, and then the subsequent rescue. That particular rescue mission has been looked within the context of what was happening with the tardy girls. Was that a fair way to look at it?
Well, it depends on the context. Okay. As long as the two cases relate to kidnapping, we're dealing with the same subject matter. And therefore, there is some room for comparison between the Canadians on the one hand and our own nationals on the other. But since then, almost everybody has come to the conclusion that, per se, the two incidents are different.
Please explain that.
The circumstances are different. The localities are different. The elements involved, i.e. the criminals, are different. And of course, bottom line, the approaches by the national authorities are also different. The involvement of foreign nationals actually now puts the Canadian one in a completely different context. And all of these are quite material. Indeed, I would want to add, and I've said this on another station a while ago, that in conflict analysis, the parties involved is part of the context. Now, if the parties have political affiliations, substantive or perceived, is part of the context. And therefore, it's not very easy, I mean, you cannot easily dismiss the idea that some people are trying to politicize the issue. So let me come to...
I'll refer to that point you made when we come to that, because the politicization. You say that you cannot dismiss the fact that
it should be part of the context of analyzing the phenomenon of kidnapping. Okay. Because if I, as a freelance person, retired Colonel Abuaji, commit that crime without any political affiliation whatsoever, it's in a slightly different context from my colleague Sami Jemfi, who is known to be an NDC member, a senior official at that, committing the same crime. Okay. Indeed, my background as a military officer, retired, also, qualifies the context. So I want to say that whether the question now is not exactly whether they are MPP or NDC. The question is, do they have political affiliations?
Hold that thought, because we'll interrogate that substantively. Go to the substantive security issues that you wanted to.
Now, I noted about seven dimensions or aspects of the statement that the minister put out. One is the question of foreign element. And it was categorical that there was no foreign involvement,
no foreign
assets in the operations itself. Now, that's very broad. The operations could be the tactical operation, that is the assault on the house. That is also part of the operation. But the operation didn't start and end with the assault on the house. The operation started with the collection of data intelligence, the processing, the preparations, the movements, and so on and so forth. Now we need to answer the question, was there foreign involvement at any juncture of this process?
Interesting.
And on the basis of the evidence that we all have, yes, there was. There were Canadian experts who were flown in into the country. I would have expected that the minister told us the exact role that the Canadians played.
You said they played no role.
No, it's a bit too much.
Okay, so here's the thing. He was asked at the press conference when he read, he said no foreign assets were involved. He repeats that, but that was in the context of the operation, to rescue. And then when there was a question and answer session, this question was asked, the one that you just posed. And then he elaborates and says, they came here to explore, I'm trying to paraphrase, to explore ways of assisting. But in the end, it wasn't necessary. And so we did all this by ourselves.
Now, what I've been trying to establish is that the term operations is not only the tactical aspect of the operation. The operation starts with the moment when the girls were kidnapped, and all the efforts that the government, with or without cooperation, collaboration with international partners put in. Now that process included intelligence gathering, intelligence processing. It included monitoring, certain activities. It might have included interrogating certain individuals remotely suspected to have been connected. When the Canadians came in, obviously they had consultations. They might have had some views, some recommendations to make. We now know, contrary to what the minister said, that there was an aspect of ransom, not paid, but demanded.
Okay.
Now we know that in that process, the call to the family in Canada would have been made available to the Canadian authorities, who would have made that same information available to the mission here and to the experts. Now I find it a bit difficult that throughout all of this process, the Canadians didn't have any substantive contribution to make. Some have suggested, and I think to some extent they may be right, that given the assets that Canadians supposedly have, that we may not have, it is possible that in their system, the subsequent conversations with the kidnappers, because I've read somewhere that the family said they couldn't pay 850, they could only pay 47,000, whatever it is. Look, for all you know, that conversation was not by the family. It could have been by security experts within the Canadian system, either based in the embassy here or based in Ottawa, you see. So all that I'm trying to say that, yes, the minister said they were not involved in the operations. Indeed, even to leave this aside, diplomatically, it would have been better to have pronounced the country's appreciation to the concern that the Canadians showed, and in diplomatic terms, to thank them for their contribution without going into details. Now, not to have done that and to have tried to suggest that they played no role, with a little diplomacy that I know, I think it's not politically correct.
That's what the Canadians did. The Canadians, the Canadian High Commission to Ghana on the Twitter account did what you're suggesting, that they thanked us.
Yes.
They didn't even thank the government of Ghana, but thanked the Ghanaian citizens.
That's right.
For showing that empathy and care about that.
But you know how we can nuance that? We also needed to have reciprocated. Indeed, we should have said that first. Okay. And let me remind all of us that rescuing the girls or releasing them, it's not that we've done Canada a service. We have an obligation under international law to protect every human being within our boundaries. And therefore, what we did was a duty under international law or in international law. But I'm saying that, to cut it short, that it wouldn't have cost us anything if we had used that platform, that public platform, to have thanked the Canadian authorities. And indeed, I've read somewhere that even the United Kingdom also gave us some intelligence or whatever it is. There's nothing wrong. It's part of the art of diplomacy. You see, even if they haven't played any role at all. I don't know whether we want to stretch this case, but the question of the ransom, again, doesn't cast us in good light. You see, if ransom was asked, we must state that ransom was asked for, although we didn't pay. In other words, the comprehensiveness of the minister's statement was it wasn't comprehensive. In fact, he should have taken all the dimensions of the process, all the operations, and pronounced himself on that. Again, I find it a bit revealing, at least for myself, that the minister chose to use the prerogative of the government to tell us about the rescue or the release mission. And nobody else on that platform had anything to say. Yes, we may choose in this country to do our things our own way. But any time similar incidents happen elsewhere, especially in the US, you will see behind the microphone, because normally they're standing in the open, you see the mayor, you see the governor, you see the sheriff, the chief, whoever, you see the police chief, you see all of them. And all of them are given the chance to explain a bit of their angle to the operation. That I think going forward we should do. Why we chose this time not to allow the police to speak. We can go back to the table and analyze it. But I have said just now on TV3 that, are we trying to gag the police? In other words, the police previously made a certain statement or made statements that we found not to be politically correct or palatable. So this time, let's keep the police. Now let's put out our own information. Now, whether it was national security, the minister, my good friend, Colonel Michael Opoku, whether it was the police CID chief, commissioner of police, Mami Adudankwa Tiwa, and so on and so forth, fine. But some of them should have been given the opportunity. Look, it's all part of the process of building capacity. If somebody erred, misspoke on one occasion, it doesn't mean going forward, you know, they shouldn't talk again.
I know you make point. I'll come to that because we'll take a second look at some of the other additional points. I want to quickly bring Kweku in on these points you've made, and then we'll come back to some other things.
Well, at any day, any time, when it comes to matters of this nature, I would defer to Colonel because of his in-depth knowledge, experience, and everything.
Wait for it.
But my knowledge and information relative to this issue contradicts some of the conclusions and interpretations that the good Colonel has made. Look, the ransom thing, and I'm picking them one by one. The ransom thing, the guys, as indicated, communicated this to the girls' families. That's a fact. The UK team that came down, which was widely reported as Canadian experts, British, they belong to a certain life insurance entity.
Okay.
And they had come with the mission to negotiate with the kidnappers.
So they are a UK team, not a Canadian team.
But they were being assisted, I guess, by a life insurance team, and this team were in charge of that. So they had been asked by the girls' families to come.
Okay.
There was no negotiation between the Ghana government or the Ghanaian security and the kidnappers relative to ransom. Nothing happened, nothing of that sort happened. Indeed, this UK team that came, that were interested in negotiating relative to anything concerning ransom, did not even get a chance to negotiate with the kidnappers. Two, the Canadian team that came, in fact, it was one person. He's the security coordinator for Canada relative to this region. He's based in Morocco. I'm sure Kenna knows what I'm talking about. He came a day before the rescue operation. A day before. So he had practically no role to play. And indeed, when the rescue happened, he was surprised and went to the national security to express his gratitude. Three rather, there's this point about a certain CCTV thing, which some people have attributed to the Canadians in terms of enhancement. That's also false. That thing was not clear. The enhancement was done by Ghanaian national security. It had absolutely nothing to do with the Canadians. I'm told it's one of your reporters who put it somewhere on social media. This is Erastus Asaredonko. This is not factual. It didn't happen. The enhancement, I repeat, was done by Ghanaian national security assets. So strictly speaking, the minister was right when he said there was no foreign assets involved in the operation, which can always say tactical aspect, and also not involved in intelligence gathering.
Interesting.
Yes, I'm saying so.
So from the beginning to the rescue.
And that is why the Canadian embassy would do what they did, and not us. They were showing appreciation. That's why they did it. Even if we have to compliment it, really, it was for them to do it first. It is true rescuing that was not doing them a favor. So we're doing ourselves to a favor. After all, our image was on the brink in terms of security and things. So in rescuing them, we were also rescuing our own integrity as a nation. But the Canadians recognized, and they are listening to us. They are watching us.
You cannot speak.
They cannot speak, but they know I'm speaking the truth. They know that I'm speaking the truth. That their coordinator, who is based in Morocco,
One person.
yes, came to Ghana the day before.
And he was surprised at the rescue.
He went to the national security to express gratitude, and it's documented. Then the embassy also did what they did. So relative to this particular case, the minister was factual.
Just a question on that. In the minister's press conference, he confirmed, though, that yes, the Canadian team were in town. So one person is not a team.
Let the minister explain that. That's what I meant by the British team that came.
Okay.
That team that came for the Canadians, for the girls, they were representing a life insurance entity. And they had come in on behalf of the Canadians to actually negotiate the ransom request that the guys had put in.
So when the minister, you interpret, when the minister says the team, yes, the team was in Ghana and exploring.
It was that team on behalf of the Canadians. The minister may clarify that. It's not for me to do so, but I'm telling you. And don't forget, I'm not talking based on only sources to government sources. You know me. I also have, yes. So I also have done my checks.
Mr. Dabo.
Yes, thank you. I've also done checks.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm saying that really, if it's an issue on so many other matters, I will not contest one bit of anything Kenya will say. But in this specific instance, and it's this instance I'm talking about, based on the checks I've done, both with Ghanaian authorities and non-Ghanaian authorities, the facts I've put here are the real facts.
Please.
Well, it's great meeting Colonel for the first time. I've admired him from a distance.
It's mutual.
And meeting Sammy too, actually. Nice to meet you. As for Jam here and I, basic points. In criminal law, abduction is different from kidnapping. And I think that we must watch the language of it. The law itself is contradictory. Also, it uses the word abduction in the English sense of the word. But in criminal law, abduction is when actually there's a kidnapping of a child for the purpose of sexual intercourse. So there's a distinction between the two. So
That is when it's what?
When it's abduction.
Okay.
You can say it in a normal English way of speaking, but once you get into the realm of the law, what happened was a kidnapping. They're not beneath the age of 18, so they're not children, so we can't even talk about it being abduction. But it's just a fine legal point. It doesn't mean much, except you're in the law courts. Two, on the ransom issue, what did the minister say? He said no ransom had been demanded from the government. what I understand happened was that the kidnappers contacted the girl's family in Canada and made the demands. Some part of the story that appears contradictory, and listen to Kuku right now, that apparently the life insurance people came in here to negotiate the ransom. I'm wondering whether they communicated that as their aim to the government authorities, because what the national what information seems to suggest is that it was when the rescue happened that our authorities got the hint that there had been a ransom demand. But
yes,
it's
true in terms of sequence.
Yes, in terms of sequence.
But the Canadian family, they knew ahead.
The Canadian knew ahead. So there's the issue of even how much communication we must have received from the Canadians. And when we talk about that, we might have to distinguish between the nationalities of the people who came and who they were representing. So there's a fine timeline. So that what the minister said was true. The government did not receive a ransom demand. But the reality is that the ransom demand was made to the family. So we can easily reconcile that and put that in. But even with respect to technology, there would be no shame to have collaborated with the Canadians. But I also think that due to the historical failures that have been highlighted, sometimes we don't even believe when the Ghanaian has done something.
Exactly.
Our technology level has gone very high, but others are still ahead of us in technology. I'll give you one small case. This was a matter I was involved in. A guy in Ghana, employed by a foreign entity, decides to harass his employers, registers an email address, and starts sending threatening emails to his employers. By the time we were hired, they had checked which computer he was using. They knew that it was a particular internet cafe in a certain part of Accra, and he was using this computer when he went this day. He used that because IP addresses are registered. So you can't mask them. So there's communication. And the minute you get on phones and the rest, the technology people will tell you they can easily track it. Even if you don't know that, you can watch movies and you'll find that there are ways of tracking. The criticism on the Takoradi girls and the Canadian women, I think they're all women, is fair. But there's also, and maybe because of the Takoradi situation, it's very difficult to accept that we did this.
Yeah.
Canada's right, the circumstances differ. Time of reporting, for those of us in the legal side of it, the time of reporting is critical. If it's a week, the kidnapped person might be in Australia.
Yeah.
Even if they were walking, they would have gone out of Ghana. Then the trail gets colder and it's more difficult to track because now you have to talk to too many people. This, I understand, the report was within an hour. If it's within an hour, they hadn't even settled with the women. So the trail was still warm. And as we are hearing, there were CCTV cameras that picked up a lot of these things. What I'm saying is that we need to move to a situation where Ghanaians understand if you see something, say something.
Immediately.
Call it ICE.
Yeah.
If you see something, say something. We are inquiring people, but there's a part of which says, I don't want to get into trouble. Yeah. Now, if you see anything that looks suspicious, say something. That's what brings in the issue about police, numbers that we can reach the police, that yes, people might abuse it. But a lot of intelligence gets to the police on the spur of the moment if the Ghanaian knows whom to call, when to call, where to call. That is probably the biggest advantage to this rescue, which unfortunately does not appear to have and to the benefit of our own citizens who went through that in the Western region. If the child is out of the house for 24 hours, call the police. We all have to learn to do these things. I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened over there, but that is what, if the trail gets cold, it's more difficult to do the rescue. And so as these things happen, let's begin to, let's begin to ask ourselves questions, how we can assist. Look, there might not have been a lot of Canadian involvement, but I happened to be in Kumasi the day the story broke. If you've worked in how some of us work, you can see Kumasi was crawling with intelligence, national security intelligence. You could see them. They were all over the hotels. Of course, they try and mask themselves, but you can tell that these are intelligence people. Once the rescue happened, I even believe, suspect, or know that the Canadian embassy moved people into Kumasi.
Yeah, they were there.
But the people I saw were Ghanaians.
Okay.
Were Ghanaians. Because there's a need for the blend in, etc., etc. Maybe one should be saying this on me. The need for the blend in that a white person will stand out, stick out. So there was Kumasi was crawling with intelligence operatives. So we had this, we got this. Let's mark that down. What lessons do we learn from this to inform us going forward? What lessons do we learn from the Takoradi experience? And my information is that the Takoradi thing isn't being taken easily. He made a very good point about the politics of it. This has been politicized.
Yeah.
Some of what I have seen, the operatives working is amazing. But of course, they can't come and tell us. And somebody made a mistake and the tank slipped and it's in trouble. Because there was a point where they were almost at it. If you speak too much, people get moved. So, but my point to all of us as Ghanaians, please, if you see something, say something. The government of Ghana keep telling us the numbers that we can call. Then even if it's a hoax, at least you have an idea who's been calling you with hoax. Well, we know who will cry wolf. But if we continue to like the matter, then we can discuss it on social media, but we are reticent about engaging to make sure it is fixed. This is only going to get worse. The borders are disappearing quickly. And spiriting people across borders is as easy as that. We need to change our attitude to law enforcement. Maybe we should not see the police as just a bunch of people who are on the side of the road to arrest us or take our money. But if we see that if there's a continued engagement with them, maybe the majority of Ghanaians will feel more comfortable in calling them and not saying, well, if I say it, I might be the one to be arrested tomorrow, etc., etc. If you see something, say something. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Just a quick point, my producers are just alerting me that each of the Takoradi kidnapped girls were reported to the Takoradi police within 24 hours of their disappearance. In fact, the family say when they got there in one of the police stations, they were asked to sit for so long until, they were not taken
Yeah,
seriously.
but I didn't say that. I'll just give you an example.
Just report as quickly as possible.
I'm just giving the report as soon as possible. If you delay, there's going to the trail will get cool.
So I think from Ace, you made the point, and I think Ken also started with it about you cannot discount the politics of this. And I think the point that Ken makes is that it's not a question of whether it's NPP or NDC, it's whether or not there is a political affiliation of the players involved. Sammy, your national chairman was this week arrested, and he's a suspect in the kidnapping investigations. This is not necessarily the girls, this is not the Canadian women, but the police statement says he's a suspect in kidnapping investigations, including also arson, right? So that's where this becomes relevant. The party's position is that is a political move to sort of mask the real reasons why this is happening, and that the individuals who have been arrested in connection with the kidnapping of the Canadian girls many of them are MPP activists. That actually disproves the police's suspicion that your chairman may be a suspect in the kidnappings, and that is the other way around. Explain that for me.
Evans, thank you very much, and I think you have expressed or summarized our position on this matter very accurately. But even before I deal with the politics of this issue, let me make the point that the rescue of the two kidnapped Canadian girls and the arrest of the perpetrators is refreshing and commendable. Issues about whether or not there was collaboration between the Canadian authorities and our security agencies, issues about whether or not ransom was demanded and whether or not Ghanaian authorities were in the known of that fact, to me, must be probed further. Because as it is now, the facts are not very clear. I know Erastus Asaredongo to be a very reputable, credible, well-researched media person. And for him to have put this information out, that indeed there was some collaboration between the Canadian authorities and our security agencies, and that they actually employed technology to enhance some CCTV footages and all that, cannot be brushed aside just like that, in my honest opinion. Obviously, Uncle Kwekubako also has his own sources, so we need to probe those issues further. But for me, the key issue there is that our security services must show more attention relative to the 3 kidnapped Takoradi girls. And I think that is a legitimate point to make. Evans, it's been 6 to 8 months since these girls were kidnapped. Situation that has caused their parents and all well-meaning Ghanaians much grief and pain. That grief and pain has been exacerbated by the unprofessional conduct of the CID boss, the false assurance she gave, the comedy of errors, and the many cases of contradictions we have seen on the part of key security actors relative to that matter has exacerbated their pain and grief. And so far, that does not send the signal that we are serious about that matter. And so we want to see the same alacrity and the effort that our authorities invested in the investigation of the kidnapping of these 2 Canadian girls being employed in the investigation of the 3 Takoradi girls, because Ghanaians also matter. And that is the first point I want to make. Now, with regards to the politics of the issue, Evans, ordinarily, matters of security, matters of crime should not be reduced to partisan political goal scoring. Here I'm not saying politics. There are some who say that matters of security should not be politicized, which I disagree with, because security is a political issue. But my position is that matters of crime, matters of security must not be reduced to partisan political goal scoring. But there are some circumstances, certain circumstances, under which it becomes necessary for us to interrogate the political affiliation of suspects who, are arrested in such matters. Number one, like you rightly pointed out, we have a situation where the largest opposition party in the country, the NDC, is being branded by government spokespersons and government officials as a party of kidnappers. Today, our national chairman stands accused. He's a subject of investigation in relation to recent cases of kidnapping in our country.
In fact, the police statement calls him a suspect.
A suspect. Now, you're listening to government communicators speak, and the sad impression is created that peace-loving, law-abiding citizen, Samuel Ufuswampofo, is a kidnapper. And so,
suspected.
Of course.
I don't know
some of the communicators
but
express that point in a very conclusive manner. We are being demonized, we are being bastardized out there, and so on. And so, if today's suspects have been arrested in connection with the kidnapping of the 2 Canadian girls, and we know them to be active, popular members of the New Patriotic Party, that fact becomes material. Okay. And here we are not seeking equalization, neither are we seeking to score any political point. We are basically clearing the name of our national chairman and the corporate image of the National Democratic Congress. We are defending ourselves, because out there in the public, in the court of public opinion, our national chairman is being branded as a kidnapper. And so if we have information to show that those, our accusers, those who are accusing us, are rather the ones who are engaging in these, dastardly acts of kidnapping and violent crime, we are entitled to put those facts out there for Ghanaians and the world to know who the real kidnappers are and the political parties they belong to. Now, number two, I agree with Kennel when he made a point that political parties are key stakeholders in the security architecture of Ghana. Our actions and inactions have a bearing on our security. It can either impact negatively or positively on our security. And so when political parties in their actions promote social vices, those political parties must be called out. They must be named and shamed as a way of dealing with that menace. And that is why, Evans, you in particular in JoyNews took upon yourself to expose and help eliminate the phenomenon of vigilantism. I'm sure you remember that. When, not too long ago, there was a shooting incident at our Ashanti Regional, NDC office. You saw the statement which was released by the Ashanti Regional Police Command. They described the suspects as members of the NDC's hawks, even though that was a pure criminal matter, Evans. But people said that was legitimate because we needed to discourage the culture of vigilantism. You understand? And so if today, we are finding out, based on incontrovertible evidence, that at least 4 of the 8 suspects, the Ghanaian suspects, who have been arrested in connection with the kidnapping of these 2 Canadian girls, are members of the dreaded Delta Force of the New Patriotic Party. People cannot blackmail us from putting that information out. It is relevant because you, Mr. Ankoma, Mr. Bako, we all cautioned against that this culture of forming vigilante groups in all the 10 regions of Ghana, supporting them. The situation we had not too long ago where some of these MPP vigilante groups unleashed terror on course of competent jurisdiction and were left off the hook, attacked officials of our security services, government appointees and all that, should be checked by government, and that it could degenerate into some of these issues. So if that is happening, and the MPP cannot say, don't blame us, don't hold us responsible. If you do that, you're politicizing the matter. And then again, in this whole discussion, Evans, consistency is key. Principle is key. People cannot approbate and be reprobating at the same time. Look, when you look at page 147 of the MPP's 2016 manifesto, security was made a very serious matter, a very political issue. In summary, what they said there, for purposes of time, I may not be able to read. They sought to blame what they described as the state of insecurity at the time on former President John Dramani Mahama. He said, the security situation in the country was, worsening because he was incompetent and promised to improve on that, make Ghanaians feel safe and secured and all that. When they came into office, they have appointed a minister for national security. They've appointed a minister of state in charge of national security. They've appointed, they have a minister of interior, minister of defense, and so on. I've heard people like Mr. Bako make the point that, the numbers don't really matter. Let's look at the outcomes and the results. Yes, I agree with that. And like my brother Suhini told you earlier, to whom much is given, much is expected. If today, in spite of the promise they gave the people of this country on the basis of which they were voted for, if today, in spite of the many security appointees they have and all that, security per official statistics of the Ghana Police Service is worsening, and that is affecting the reputation of Ghana, people cannot expect us to have a conversation about security without bringing in the MPP's promise in the run-up to the 2016 election. That also is material. Now, what are the facts, Evans? What are the facts? The facts are simple. One of the arrested suspects, by name Seydou Yakubu, is an ardent supporter, in fact, a staunch member of the New Patriotic Party, and this is not our creation. On the 22nd, no, you see, it's not, even armed robbers, when they are arrested, deny their complicity. It's not about whether or not they've denied. What does the evidence show? On the 22nd of February 2019, even before Seydou was arrested, he granted an interview to Kumasi Biggs 47. In that interview, he was asked a specific question. Are you a member of the NDC? He said, no. I am an MPP member, and everybody knows that to be the case, and that I actually founded the Abuabu Kifit Club of the MPP 12 years ago. The MPP cannot run away from that.
Deny that.
The tape is there. We have given the tape to your reporter, Parker. You see, so it's not about their denial. It is about what the evidence. Say, like Dr. Bawumia said, we have brought our evidence. If you disagree, bring your own evidence. Number 2 on the list is Abdulrahman Suleimana. This Abdulrahman Suleimana, who on his Facebook wall confesses and professes to be a member of the New Patriotic Party at Asawase. He uses his Facebook wall to promote the activities of the New Patriotic Party. And these are all matters of public record. Another suspect, Safiano. So you see, today, the smearing campaign and that evil agenda against our national channel, you know, has backfired, and it has backfired very terribly. Ghanaians know who the kidnappers are and from what political parties, you know, they are coming from. And I think that our brothers in the MPP must acknowledge these facts. The CID, the Tiwa Adodankwa CID, must begin to look at these vigilante groups in the New Patriotic Party, in their investigations, and stop focusing solely on the person of Mr. Ofosu-Ampofo when there is no actionable intelligence or any evidentiary basis for that. Well, that is our submission.
We'll take a quick break. When I come, I'll hear from Keno and Kweku, and then take a brief comment from Ace, and then we'll wrap up. Stay with us here on Newsfile. And you are live on Newsfile, and so when you're having fun, time really flies. We've extended by 30 minutes, and we still have just 3 minutes to wrap up. And so that's where we are on this subject. So, Keno, briefly, if you can, because I still want to see if we can hear a minute from Kweku on this. A minute for yourself as well, if you can. Just wrap up for me on what Kweku says he ceded his time to you. So, Keno, I want you to address you started the issue about the politics of this and why it's important. Going forward, we still have to solve the Tade conundrum, right? We can learn lessons from Canada as well. Where do you stand on how we proceed doing? Because this is a new trend. The president is worried. Everybody is as well.
The kidnapping, you mean? It's not a new trend.
No, I mean, in terms of... okay, I get you because the police statistics show it. But in terms of
the foreign element.
Exactly, the foreign element.
First of all, it would be my hope that the second suspect, John Oji, is able to provide information that is both credible, substantive, that can help the police now, if you like, to make the trail a bit warm. But I'm afraid that given all the time that has passed, and given that he disappeared back to Nigeria, I wonder whether he's going to disclose where the girls are. And even if he discloses where the girls are, whether indeed the girls are under his control. So, putting all things together, and I believe the police are doing that, we need to expand and deepen the collaborations that we have with our neighboring police organizations, especially Togo, Benin, Nigeria. We need to do similarly with the Interpol branch in West Africa, the WAPCO, then of course Interpol. And at this stage, Americans are already helping us. I think they can, give us substantive help, the UK, Canadians, and so on. Now, coming back home, I've said that our approach to matters of security in this country appears to be ad hoc. So it was terrorism, we got hyped up. Now it is kidnapping, we're hyped up. It's Galamsey, we're hyped up. Now, all along, you're beginning to ask, where is the national strategy for addressing our security concerns? So we need. You don't see the strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. We need to think through the issue.
Ace, sure. That's all I have, in fact.
30 seconds.
Sorry, we don't have that.
15 seconds.
I heard what you said.
Yes.
What you are really saying is that, and I feel your pain. We have criminals in the MPP. We have criminals in the NDC. Ghanaians know that. You guys stop this game. All right, we know that, and you didn't go out to recruit criminals. They joined you. They are Ghanaians. So some Ghanaians are criminals, right? The slurring and the tagging isn't quite, and soon you would lose the ears of Ghanaians with this, because all we hear is that you're always trying to take political advantage. I hear, look, the police, if it turns out that there's nothing against Mr. Example, can you imagine what it would do to the credibility of the police? So let the things unravel. But my last thing, and agreeing with this is this, and I need to restate it. Let's be more inquisitive. But the police, the reaction to reports, and I wanted to put this out, that there had been a stealing, the person was running away with the bag. We tried to enter Nima police station, and they said we came by the wrong road. Everybody had to sit in the car and go back and come in by the right entry before they would listen to us. By the time they went through, you came back the wrong road, the bag had been dumped, the person had disappeared. This is something that has to be dealt with. instead of fighting the form, what is the substance? And if we don't do that, we're going to have these problems.
Isan Kumar is a lawyer. Sami Jemfi is communications officer of the National Democratic Congress. Kenneth Festus, retired Abaji, is a security analyst who joined us. Kukubaku Jr., really insightful thoughts.
I prefer Abdul Malik.
Abdul Malik Kukubaku Jr., yes.
Don't add the junior if it's Abdul Malik.
Okay.
Senior is no longer with us, so no need for...
No junior. If it's Abdul Malik.
Abdul Malik Kukubaku.
Thank you.
Thank you very much all for joining us via Joy FM and also the Joy News channel. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Took your normal last.
Yeah.
MTN.
Welcome to the new world.
Bank of Africa. As strong as a group, as close as a partner.
Eden Heights. Welcome home.
Waylead has all the solutions.
MoneyGram, bringing you closer.